Chapter 10: Non-experimental and quasi-experimental research. The difference between a true experimental research and a quasi-experimental research is random assignment. So if we don't have random assignment in a research, we don't have a true experimental research. The difference between a quasi-experimental research and non-experimental research is not that clear, because it depends on the degree to which the researcher is able to control the confounding variables. So the more control we have on confounding variables, the closer we get to a quasi-experimental research. There are two types of non-experimental research. One is non-equivalent group and the other one is within subject design. The non-equivalent group is when you have two groups, but the groups are not comparable because we don't have random assignment in non-experimental group. In non-experimental research, there are three types of non-experimental research or non-equivalent group research design. One is the differential research, the other one is post-test only, and then there is a pre-test and post-test. The differential research is when you are comparing pre-existing groups and you don't have any treatment. This is a kind of research that we already talked about, and it's called ex post facto or after the fact. This means you compare two groups but there is no treatment and you have no control over the treatment. Like when you're comparing age groups or gender groups or different between two groups of students who attend different colleges, or you're comparing the high self-esteem or low self-esteem groups. Pre-existing groups, no treatment. The second type of non-experimental research is the post-test only. So you have two groups, one group receives the treatment and the other one doesn't, and then you do a post-test to compare the groups. This is a typical example of non-experimental research that some people do, and you should know that this is not a valid research, because any difference in post-test could be attributed to the treatment or could be attributed to the initial differences between the two groups. So for example, if you have a group of participants, one group takes a specific course and the other one doesn't take that course, and then you give them a post-test and one group performs better than the other one, the difference in post-test is not necessarily attributed to the difference in treatment. Perhaps the two groups were initially different and that's why they also were different in the post-test. A similar example is when two groups go to different programs or two groups receive two different teaching methods. Unless you have a pre-test or you have a random assignment to divide your participants into experimental group and control group, any differences in the post-test does not indicate a cause and effect relationship. The third type of non-experimental research is pre-test, post-test design. So again, here we don't have random assignments, so the groups are not totally equivalent or comparable. However, you give them a pre-test to make sure that before your treatment they are equal. So if before the treatment they are equal and after the treatment one group performs better, the difference could be attributed to the treatment. So this method takes care of the problem of assignment bias to some extent. However, there are some other concerns. For example, although the two groups were equal according to the pretest, but the pretest doesn't tell us if they were also different in their IQ and in their learning capacity and their experience. So again, because we don't have random assignment, even if we have pretest, it's not totally reliable to say that the difference in the post-test is totally attributed to the treatment. There's also a within subject non-experimental research in which we have a pretest, a treatment, and a post-test. and we don't have a control group. And there are two types of pre-test and post-test study. One is when you have only one pre-test and one post-test, and the other one is when you have multiple observations before treatment and multiple observations after the treatment. This second one is called time series design. If you have only one pre-test and one post-test, all types of time-related threats to internal validity might be a problem, including history, instrumentation, testing effects, maturation, statistical regression that we learned in previous chapters. And because we have only one treatment, it's impossible to do counterbalancing. So this type of research is very problematic because we don't have a control group and we only have a pre-test and post-test. Let me give you an example. If you are making political commercial for a candidate, like a presidential candidate, and you measure the candidate popularity in April, and then you broadcast your political commercial for like 2 months in June and July, and then you measure his popularity in October, and you see a significant difference. The difference between pre-test and post-test cannot be necessarily attributed to your commercial, because there are so many factors, so many events that happens between the pre-test and post-test that could have caused the popularity of the candidate to go up or down. That has nothing to do with your political commercial or your treatment.